Howdy again everyone. A couple of months ago now, Samyang launched a pair of new autofocus lenses, their first new optics in quite a while, and after testing the new 12mm f2 option for APS-C cameras, I've finally got my hands on their new AF 24mm f1.8 lens for full-frame mirrorless cameras. It costs £450 here in the UK or $500 in the US, which is potentially good value for an autofocus lens with an aperture this bright, and it's only for Sony's E-mount mirrorless cameras. I'd like to thank Samyang's UK distributor for loaning me this lens for a couple of weeks for testing, although as usual this is a totally independent review. I love bright aperture 24mm lenses on full frame cameras. They give you a lovely wide field of view that seems to just draw you into the image, and they're very versatile, useful for landscape, street, indoor and wedding photography. Samyang chose to heavily market this as being a great lens for astrophotography. I'd normally want something with a wider angle for work like that, personally, but if this lens is particularly sharp at f1.8 with low coma, then it could be useful for that too. Let's start by looking at the build quality though. The lens is small and lightweight at only 230 grams, although it does feel a bit plasticky and hollow. It's based on a metal lens mount though, with quite a narrow weather sealing gasket around the edge. The lens has a unique feature. If you hold down the autofocus hold button at the side when turning your camera on, then a gentle light at the rear will spring into life and stay on. It shows red, but will turn green if you manually focus the lens to infinity. The idea is that can help you outdoors at night if you're doing astrophotography to make sure you're properly focused on the stars. And it works, actually. I found it helpful while doing some nighttime shooting. The lens's plastic focus ring can be used as, well, a focus ring, or it can be set with a switch to control your aperture or other functions. The focus ring turns smoothly and very slightly heavily. When shooting in video mode and using it to change your aperture, it won't change your aperture completely smoothly, but at least the changes don't suddenly click into place. The manual focus control of the lens is pretty responsive, and it doesn't show much in the way of focus breathing either, as you can see here. The lens's autofocus motor works silently, accurately and averagely quickly. No problems here either. The lens comes with a handy pouch, a plastic hood and the usual front and rear caps. Its filter thread size is 58mm wide and it does not feature image stabilization. Overall, while the lens feels a bit flimsy and plastic, it's actually pretty feature-laden and works very well. The infinity focus light trick would be a welcome feature on other wide-angle lenses in the future. Let's move on and look at image quality now. We'll start by testing on a full-frame camera, my 42MP Sony a7R III. In-camera corrections are turned on. At f1.8, the lens is fantastically sharp in the middle of the image. Contrast is just good here, and there's a small hint of purple fringing on strongly contrasting edges, only small though. Let's have a look at the corners. Wow, they are impressively sharp too, with good contrast. This is one of the sharpest 24mm lenses I've ever tested actually. Nice. Let's top down to f2.8. Image quality is the same in the edges, but back in the middle we see completely perfect picture quality. The lens stays this sharp down to f11, where a little edge of softness begins to creep in from the effect of diffraction from the middle and back into the corners. So overall, the lens is brilliantly sharp even straight from f1.8, and even on a high resolution full frame camera. Nice. Alright, let's test it on an APS-C camera now, my little 24MP Sony a5100. Being small and light, this could be a real nice option for APS-C shooters. The good news is that that excellent sharpness continues here at f1.8 in the middle, albeit again with a touch of purple fringing. The corner image quality is nearly as sharp. Stop down to f2.8 and the corners become razor sharp with no more colour fringing, and so does the middle. Once again, stop down as far as f11 and the image begins to soften due to diffraction. Overall though, virtually top marks here on an APS-C camera too. Now let's take a look at vignetting and distortion on a full frame camera. these pictures are taken without in-camera corrections. We can observe some moderate barrel distortion being projected here with a slight moustache pattern. At f1.8, the image corners do look a little dark, although vignetting isn't as bad as I was expecting. Stop down to f2.8 and they brighten up a little, but they don't get any brighter the more you stop down. So, while it's good to see that Samyang at least attempted to correct these issues optically, you'll still want to leave your corrections turned on. This lens can focus down to 19 centimeters, which is fantastic for getting nice and close to your subject. The close-up image quality is rather softer at f1.8 with some colour fringing on contrasting edges, but it is still usable. Stop down to f2.8 though, and it looks far better again. Now let's see how the lens works against bright lights. There are a few hints of flaring and glaring here and there when bright lights are in or near the edge of your image, but this is certainly lower than average. Something I mentioned before is that the lens is being heavily advertised as good for astrophotography. Well, let's see how well it handles the problem of coma. As you can see here, even at f1.8, there's barely a trace of coma smearing, very minimal, much less than you would expect to see for a lens of this type. And also, I decided to test the lens's sun stars. At f1.8 they are non-existent, stop down to f5.6 or so, and they start looking nicely defined. Stop down as far as f11 or f16 and they dramatically cast themselves across almost your entire image, as if the eyes of God himself are staring into the depths of your soul. That is about as spectacular as you can get. And let's take a look at this lens's bokeh. A 24mm f1.8 lens can get you some notably out of focus backgrounds if you're close enough to your subject, although it won't be mistaken for a portrait lens. At f1.8, your out of focus backgrounds will be fairly soft, although you'll be able to catch a little highlighting around busy areas, particularly if you're shooting very close to your subject. You only need to stop down to about f2 though to see a lot of that highlighting clear up. And finally, related to bokeh, comes longitudinal chromatic aberration. It's just an average show here. At f1.8, some blue and magenta highlighting is visible before and after the plane of focus. It's reduced at f2.8 and at f4 it's gone. Overall, this is an excellent bright aperture 24mm lens with very few weaknesses and one or two nice tricks up its sleeve. It's small and light and has a good focus system for video making, but its key qualities are its excellent sharpness, good colours and contrast, and low coma for astro work. Oh, and don't forget those insane sun stars for those who are interested in such things. Its rather reasonable price seals the deal, so there's not much more to say other than highly recommended. Hey, so what you doing? Are you going to move on and watch another YouTube video now? Before you do, check out my Patreon page, the link is in the description below. You can support the channel over there to help me keep these reviews coming, and there's a bunch of exclusive content for supporters over there too, including special exclusive monthly videos. Ciao for now, everybody.